Hello everyone, we are from Group 3 and we are Ero, Taufik, Advan, Mahesa, Arsilia, Adelia, and me, Bella. Today, we are going to presenting about how morality and ambiguity reflect in Lady Windermere'S Fun by Oscar Wilde. Introduction. In literature, the term moral ambiguity means a situation that lacks clarity regarding the correctness or wrongness of a plot or person, making the intention of the author unclear. Thus, a morally ambiguous character cannot be applied described as good or bad character. Such a story can be quite complex, leading to multiple interpretations on the part of the reader. According to filsafat moral, Projo points out that morality is the quality of human behavior, which, based on it, we can take a conclusion whether an action is right or wrong, good or bad. 1989. Morality is also including the understanding of good and bad of human action. Take from Projo's statement, it can be said that moral is a principle of right or wrong based on human behavior. Since moral is based on the human action, every human being has different behavior. Human behavior can be influenced by many factors, such as culture or situation, emotion, values, persuasion, personality characteristic, and many more. However, not all human beings deal with this kind of action. It's not impossible that both kind of action, positive and negative behavior, will lies as one in someone's personality and influence someone's behavior. This study discusses the morality and ambiguity that reflect in Lady Windermere's Fun by Oscar Wilde. Lady Windermere's Fun is one of the well-known dramas in the end of 19th century in England. This play has four acts, takes setting in London, has 16 characters, or 9 women and 7 men. The play tells a story of a woman named Lady Windermere, who is discovers that her husband might be having an affair with another woman. She confronts her husband, but he instead invites the other woman, Miss Arlene, to his wife's birthday party. Enraged by her husband's unfaithfulness, Lady Windermere leaves her husband for another lover. After discovering what has transpired, Miss Arlene follows Lady Windermere and attempts to persuade her to return to her husband, and in the course of this, Miss Arlene is discovered in a compromising position. It is then revealed Miss Arlene is Lady Windermere's mother, who abandoned her family 20 years before. Miss Arlene sacrifices herself and her reputation to save her daughter's marriage. By reading the plot, we can find out that there are some characters who look bad in the eyes of other characters, when in fact they are good, but the way they act is not right. Because of this, there is a misunderstanding and the assumption that they are not good people. This is called the character of moral ambiguity. So, this study will analyze several characters in this play who have moral ambiguity through the dialogues, scans, and action they did in the drama.
So, theoretical background. At the start of Oscar Wilde's play, Lady Windermere's Fan, which largely centers around a stuffy upper-class party. Lady Windermere herself and several of the other characters have a very clear-cut notions of what makes people good or bad. Lady Windermere, a young wife and well-respected member of London society, is universally seen as a good and moral, and she believes that she should only associate with other moral people. Morality and immorality seems to be diametrically opposed, with no possible of middle ground. However, the boundaries between moral and immoral become muddled as the play goes on, eventually becoming so blurred that it is impossible to separate the two. Good people can easily be mistaken for bad ones and vice versa, but Wilde seems to make an even further reaching claim. When it comes to human beings and the complicated world in which they live, rigid concepts of good and evil are essentially meaningless. Problem: in Lady Windermere's fan, rigid concepts of good and evil are essentially meaningless. Objective: to understand how is that possible? Research question: how is it possible that Lady Windermere's fan managed to blur the concept of good and evil? So, morality, moral ambiguity. Morality indicates that what is right and wrong way to behave. For instance, that one should be fair and not unfair to others. This is considered of interest to explain the social behavior of individuals living together in groups. Results from animal studies or insights into universal justice principles do not necessarily help us to address moral behavior in modern societies. This also requires the reconciliation of people who endorse different political orientations or adhere to different religions. The observation that good people can do bad things further suggests that should look beyond the cause of individual defiance or delinquency to understand moral behavior. In our analysis, we consider key explanatory principles emerging from prominent theoretical approaches to capture important features characterizing human morality. This relates to A. The social anchoring of right and wrong, B. Conception of the moral self, and C. The interplay between thoughts and experiences. We argue that these three key principles explain the interest of so many researchers in the topic of morality and examine whether and how these are addressed in empirical research available today. The role of morality in the maintenance of social order is recognized by scholars from different disciplines. Biologists and evolutionary scientists have documented examples of selfless and empathic behavior observed in communities of animals living together. Considering this as relevant origins of human morality, like the main focus of this work is on display of fairness, empathy, or altruism in face-to-face group, where individuals all know and depend on each other. In the analysis provided by Tomasello and Weich, this would be considered first state of morality, where individuals can observe and reprocreate the treatment they receive from others to elicit and reward cooperative and empathetic behaviors that help to protect individual and group survival. Philosophers, legal scholars, and political scientists have addressed a more abstract moral principles that can be used to regulate and govern the interactions of individuals in larger and more complex societies. Here, the nature of cooperative or empathic behavior is much more symbolic as it depends less on direct exchange between specific individuals, but taps into more abstract and ambiguous concepts such as the greater good. Scholarly efforts in this area have considered how specific behaviors might not be in line with different moral principles and which guidelines and procedures might institutionalize social order according to such principles. These approaches tap into what Tomasello and Weich considered the second tier of morality, which emphasized the social and signaling functions of moral behavior and to distinguish humans from animal morality. At this level, behavioral guidelines that have lost their immediate survival value in modern societies, such as specific dress code or dietary restrictions, may nevertheless come to be seen as prescribing essential behavior that is morally right. Specific behavior can acquire the symbolic moral value to the extent that they define how individuals typically mark their religious identity, communicate respect for authority, or secure group belonging to those adhering to them. Moral judgments that function to maintain social order in this way rely on complex explanation and require verbal exchange to communicate the moral overtones of behavioral guidelines. Language-driven interpretation and attributions are needed to capture symbolic meaning and infer intentions that are not self-evident in behavioral displays or outwardly visible indicators in emotion. The interest of psychologists in moral behavior as a factor in maintaining social order has long been driven by developmental questions, like how do children acquire the ability to do this, for example, and clinical implications like what are the origins of social divides and delinquency. Jonathan Haidt's publication on the role of quick intuition versus deliberate reflection in distinguishing between right and wrong marked a turning point in the interest of psychologists in these issues. The consideration of specific psychological mechanisms involved in moral reasoning prompts many psychological researchers to engage with this area of inquiry. The development also facilitated the connection of psychological theory to neurobiological mechanisms and inspired attempts to empirically examine underlying process at this level. For instance, by using functional magnetic resonance imaging or fMRI is measures to monitor the brain activity of individuals confronted with moral dilemmas.
Chapter 3 Methodology. First, research method. The study used the descriptive qualitative method. According to the several prominent qualitative scholars, Creswell 2002, Pope and Mays 1995, Tenzin and Lincoln 1994, qualitative research is intended to deeply explore, understand, and interpret social phenomena within its natural setting. Therefore, this method involves a collection of various empirical material, such as case studies, personal experience, life introspective stories, interview, observation, history, interaction, visual text, which describe the routine and certain moment that a person feels. 2. Object of the study. The object of the study are the characters in Lady Windermere'S fan play by Oscar Wilde. The study will focus on analyzing the moral ambiguity of character through the way they do or act to other characters in the play. 3. Data and data source. There are two types of data in the study. A. Primary data. The primary data of the study is Lady Windermere found by Oscar Wilde. This is the most important data because we analyze our topic of study from display. B. Secondary data. Secondary data is supporting data taken from all literature books and several articles that help our research. Therefore, the information we find will relate to our topic of study or character in the play. 4. Technique of data collection. 1. Write the script of the play. 2. Underline the important dialogue or scan. 3. Taking notes of the important information that related to the topic of the study. 4. Rank the data into several parts based on their classification. 4. A5. After all the previous step done, draw the conclusion. Technique of data analysis. In analyzing the data, we use descriptive qualitative content analysis. There are three steps of technique to analyze the data. 1. Analyze the character in the Lady Windermere's pen play by Oscar Wilde. 2. Analyze the conflict in the story that related to the study. 3. Make the conclusion.
Hello, I'm Adver Adawirana. In here, I will explain the discussion session. A. Morality in Oscar Wilde, Lady Windermere fan. At the start of Oscar Wilde's play, Lady Windermere fan, which largely ran centered around a upper-class party. Lady Windermere and several of the other characters have very clear-cut notion of what makes people good or bad. Lady Windermere, a young, wife and well-respected member of London society, is universally seen as good and moral, and she believes that she should only associate with other moral people. Morality and immorality appear to be contradictory to boundaries between moral and immoral become muddled as the play goes on. In Act 1, most of the characters seem to be confident in their understanding of makes a person moral or immoral, but this instant quickly begin to get confused, discussing which quest she achieved in her home. Lady Windermere tells her friend Lord Darlington that as far as she concerned, a man or woman who behaves badly is an irredeemably bad person. The conflict at the end of this act results directly from Lady Windermere's devotion to her ideal of goddess. "How outgoed women are!" exclaimed her husband, Lord Windermere, when she refused to consider inviting the disreputable Miss Erlyn to her birthday party. "How weak bad men are!" Lady Windermere countered, setting up strict dichotomy that will turn out have disastrous result in the comic scan. As the play nears its conclusion, Miss Erlyn Ward's reputation has shifted dramatically throughout the play emerges as the clearest example of how morality and immorality can never be completely separate when it comes to human being. On the one hand, Miss Erlyn seemed to demonstrate her goodness when she sacrificed her reputation in order to prevent Lady Windermere from making the mistake of leaving her husband. Lady Windermere interprets this action as selfless and takes it as evidence that even people who behaved badly in the past can worthy of forgiveness after all. When Lord Windermere accused Mr. Erlyn of blackmailing him in order or to regain acceptance in society, she doesn't deny it. Miss Erlyn is unabashed about both her morality and immorality, demonstrating that people dealing with the more complicated realities can never fall cleanly into one category or another. There is the same for all of us, and good and evil, sin and innocence go through it hand. This line is an admission of Lady Windermere's own guilt. The event of the play have forced her to do things that she thinks are immoral, like contemplate leaving her husband, even though she used to believe that she never would do such thing. By the time that Lady Windermere calls Miss Erlyn a good woman, at the end of the play, it's clear that term, which also show up in the play subtitle, means much more than it makes initially seem to.
B. Moral ambiguity representation in Oscar Wilde Lady Windermere's Fan. One of the central questions of Lady Windermere's Fan is moral ambiguity. The play expresses the view that supposedly bad people can do good things, just as good people can do bad things, while consequently suggests that by nature humans are more complicated than the two extremes of bad and good. A. Moral ambiguity representation in Lady Windermere character. Lady Windermere is the play's protagonist. Lady Windermere adores her husband, Lord Windermere, and reveres the memory of her mother, whom she believed died when Lady Windermere was a baby. She is unaware that Miss Erlyn is actually her mother. At the start of the play, she has very rigid views on morality and believes that all people are either good or bad. But as the play unfolds, she grows more and more uncertain of how good and evil play out in the real world. In particular, He expresses with Miss Ellen shows her that the same person can be both weak and good. Lady Windermere's confusion and dawning understanding of morality's ambiguity serve as the primary illustration of one of the story's key themes. B. Moral ambiguity representation in Lord Windermere's character. Lord Windermere is Lady Windermere's husband. He is wealthy and respectable gentleman who seems to be well liked, and he treats his wife lovingly. However, he deceives her when he begins financially supporting Miss Erline, even though he does so out of love for Lady Windermere. Lord Windermere knows that Miss Erline is actually Lady Windermere's mother, and he believed that Lady Windermere would want her beloved mother to be happy and socially respectable if she knew the truth. Lady Windermere has more nuanced view of morality than his wife, since he believed that Miss Erline deserved a second chance despite her past mistake. However, he becomes more convinced of her weakness throughout Miss Erline's rules attempts to manipulate him. Throughout the play, Lord Vandermeer seems to try constantly to behave morally, but his attempts often lead to confusion and misunderstanding. C. Moral ambiguity representation in Miss Erline's character. Miss Erline is a mysterious woman who is new to London society. She is admired by all the men in London society, even though she lacks respectable family relations, and there are all kinds of scandals, rumors about her past. Toward the end of the play, the audience learns that she is actually Lady Windermere's mother, and that she abandoned her child to pursue a lover, who eventually abandoned Miss Erline herself. When she found out that her daughter had married the wealthy Lord Windermere, she began demanding money from him since she knew that he would want to hurt Lady Windermere by revealing Miss Erline's true identity. In the end, she suggests in using his connection to Ruth Vandermeer to regain entrance into polite society. D. Moral ambiguity representation in Lord Darlington character. Lord Darlington is a young gentleman who is generally believed to behave wickedly. Though Lady Windermere thinks he's only pretending to be bad. Lord Darlington is playful and flirtatious and holds a flexible view of morality. In the first act, he tells Lady Windermere that he thinks her views are too black and white. Lord Darlington sets up a dichotomy not between good and bad, but between pretending to be good and bad. However, he later takes the question more seriously, telling Lady Windermere that Lord Darlington is shown to take a stance against moral absolutism. E. Moral ambiguity representation in Duchess of Berwick character. The Duchess of Berwick is a respectable older woman and friend of Lady Windermere's. She is Agatha's mother and Augustus' sister. In the first two acts, the Duchess serves as a comedic representation of the expectation of polite society, especially as in concert woman's role. She is preoccupied preoccupied with presenting herself and her daughter in a positive light, and she seems to use Lady Windermere more as means to social against than as adult friends. The Duchess loves to gossip and tells Lady Windermere about the rumor surrounding Lord Windermere and Miss Erline, thus setting into motion the central misunderstanding that drives the plot. F. Moral ambiguity representation in Lord Augustus Lurton character. Augustus is the brother of the Duchess of Berwick. He's been married and divorced multiple, and quickly falls in love with Miss Erline, despite the fact that she's clearly manipulating him in order to gain social status by marrying him. Though he is initially precocious with Miss Erline's lack of family relation, he is repulsed by Lady Windermere's acceptance of her, and he proposed to Miss Erline at the party. The other man thanks August for his naivety, but he eagerly pursues Miss Erline regardless.
So, in the part G, moral ambiguity representation in Mr. Cecil Graham character. Cecil Graham is a young gentleman who attends the party and seems to be a friend of Lord Windermere and the other man. Cecil is also nephew of Lady Jedburgh, to whom he introduced Mr. Erlin at the party. Wilde also funnels some of his commentary through the character of Cecil Graham, a clever man who picked apart the inherent ridiculousness of English society. He points out that in reality, the line between good and bad is rather faint and certainly irrelevant. He comments that weak women bother one, good woman pose one. That is the only difference between them. To this Lord Augustus replies, I prefer women with a past. They are always so damned amusing to talk to, will constantly proposes the difficult of categorizing people. Moral ambiguity representation in Mr. Dumby character. Dumby is another young gentleman who attends the party. He is first introduced as an example of how empty and performative language can be social settings. He makes a number of contradictory statements in conversation with different quests and seems perfectly comfortable doing so. I also implied that Dombey is Lady Playdale's lover and possibly Mrs. Arlene as well. He initially tells Lady Playdale that he doesn't know who Mrs. Arlene is, only to have Mrs. Arlene reveal that he visits her often. In the third act, Dombey is comedic foil to Cecil Graham and Augustus, behaving in carefree, carefully native way that the other men sometimes mock. Dombey. I am to myself, I am the only person in the world I should like to know truthfully, but I don't see any chance of it just at present. Moral ambiguity representation in Lady Plymdale character. Lady Plymdale is a guest at the party, though she is married. It is implied that Dumpy is her lover. When she finds out Dumpy knows Mrs. Arlene, she's immediately angry, but then decided that connection could be useful. She plans to send her husband to meet Mrs. Arlene as well so that he will stop some smothering her with attention. Lady Plymdale gossips about Mrs. Arlene at the start of the party, but seems to admire her by the end. Moral ambiguity representation in Lady Agatha Carley's character. Agatha is the Duchess of Berwick's daughter. She is a quiet young woman who only says yes, mama. Agatha behaves as a model of ladylike politeness and submission throughout the first two acts. She gets engaged to Mr. Flopper at the end of the party, much to her mother's delight, and agrees to move to Australia with him. 5. Conclusion. In conclusion, moral ambiguity refers to a situation in which the author's motives are ambiguous due to a lack of clarification about the correctness or wrongness of a plot or person. As a result, a morally ambiguous character cannot be accurately represented as either bad or good. Morality indicates what is the right and wrong way to behave. For instance, that one should be fair and not unfair to others, according to Haidt and Casimir 2010. The morality and ambiguity in Lady Windermere'S Fan by Oscar Wilde that reflected in some characters of the play. Some characters in the play who look bad in the eyes of other characters, when in fact they are good, but the way they act is not right. So there is a misunderstanding and the assumption that they are not good people. According to moral ambiguity representation in Lady Windermere's character, Lady Windermere's
confusion, and dawning understanding of morality ambiguity serves as a primary illustration of one of the story's themes. Lady Windermere, don't say that, Arthur. There is the same world for all of us, and good and evil, sin and innocence go through it hand in hand. To shut one's eyes to half of life that one may live securely is as though one blinded oneself that one might walk with more safely in a land of pit and precipice. Mrs. Allen is a mysterious woman who is new to London society. She is admired by all the men in London society, but in the end of the play, the audience learns that she is actually Lady Windermere's mother, and that she abandoned her child to pursue a lover, who eventually abandoned Mrs. Allen herself. When she found out that her daughter had married a wealthy Lord Windermere, she began demanding money from him since she knew that he wouldn't want to hurt Lady Windermere by revealing Mrs. Erlene's true identity. In the end, she succeeds in using this connection to Lord Windermere to regain entrance into polite society. Mrs. Ellen. Then we talk of it on the terrace. Even business should have a picturesque background. Should it not, Windermere? With a proper background, woman can do anything. So by reading this play, the reader gets a lesson that do not get easy to judge on people.